Hey, everybody. Hey, how are you?
Good. I tried calling Reverend Hatch twice the full time. He went straight to voicemail.
Oh, I just spoke with him. I
Okay.
just spoke with him. I told him you'd be calling him about now.
Okay. I'll try again, but just let you know, he's going straight to voicemail.
Okay.
I don't know you got that way. Certain phones, they have a thing with the unsaved number, goes straight to voicemail.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I did just speak with him, though.
Okay. Yeah, just save it on time to check his missed calls. You may have to call us if that's the problem.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm writing this down. Hey, everybody. Okay. All right, we are good. Let me get this. Whew. Okay. All right. Oops. Now. Ooh. Oh. Hey, everybody. Hey, Dave, Linear Bob out in Silicon Valley, left coast. Linda, Andre, sending you all much love today. Got a lot to talk about. Going to be talking about. Did you all know this? The United States is 30% white male, but they hold 62% of the elective offices. So power in the United States really is not reflective of what the United States looks like. We've got to have a discussion about that. We're going to be talking with Ray McGovern about Ukraine, the possibilities for peace. But I want you all to understand who he is. He was the chair of the National Intelligence Estimates, which meant that he was in charge of briefing the president. He briefed 3 presidents. He'd be ostensibly the first person that the president would see. And I think it's important for us to know who he is when you're talking to him and when we're getting opinions. And I think it's important for us to know who he is. The war. When you're talking to him and when we're getting hold on. Opinions. And I think it's Shanina, I'm coming up, sweetie.
Hey, did you forget about the stroke lady?
No, you know what? I sure did. Could we do her tomorrow? I am so sorry.
She moved her appointment around. She just called me and just told me she did it. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, honey. I am so sorry. I'm just a little jammed up.
Okay.
I apologize. I forgot. I completely forgot. I am so sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay. Okay, we're coming up. Oh. I see. I am doing this. Okay. So we got that.
All right, we're coming up in the 60s.
All right, everybody. Frank, everybody needs some money. Oh my gosh. Joyce, you're so sweet. Carol, how you doing, sweetie? Jewel, hey, sweetie. Sending you much love. Lorraine, sending you much love. How's your mom doing? Hope she's doing well. Everybody, please like and share this show. Like and share, like and share, like and share. All right, so let's get right to it.
10 seconds.
Oh boy. Ooh. Thank you, Devin. Let's have a great show.
You're welcome. Still trying with Forever Hatch.
Okay.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota up there in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm sending you much love today, everybody. And my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page and on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Meet Andre and Linda and Dave Dowling and Linear Bob from the left coast, Silicon Valley. Dave Dowling up there in Canada. Joyce and Frank and Carol on the left coast, and Jewel up there in New York, and Lorraine here in Chicago. So many people are joining us from all over the country. How you doing, sweetie? That's right, worldwide, Deborah Thomas. And we're going to continue to grow the show. George Bliss here in Chicago. In fact, he got me here. In fact, yeah, he sure did. I was not planning to be here. Oh, but man plans, God laughs. There you go. So here I am with you every day. It's what a blessing it has been. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Sending you much love today. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to have Ray McGovern here. And Ray McGovern briefed 3 presidents, one of the top analysts in all of the CIA. I want him to explain to you what the National Intelligence Estimates Board is. He was the chair of that. And his specialty was Russia. So we're going to talk with him about what he sees unfolding in this Ukrainian, Russian, United States, NATO, EU conflict. What does he see unfolding? What are the stakes? And who has an interest in peace? Who has an interest in the conflict going on and on and on? Does the conflict need to continue to go? We need to talk about that. What's at stake here? Then I came across a very interesting study that I thought was worthy of our examination. The United States is 30% white male, 30% white male, but 62% of the office holders in the United States are white male. So white men are 30% of the population, but they hold 62% of the elective offices. It makes you, and this is in light of the fact that something interesting has happened with the Supreme Court that Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to join. For the first time in the history of the Republic, it will not be majority white male. It shouldn't be unusual because America is not majority white male. So I want you to talk to me about that. I want you to talk to me about that today. We're going to be talking at 6:30. What do you think about that? I mean, you would think that if you looked at elective office, that most of America is white male. That's not true. It's just not true. So white women are way underrepresented. Black, brown, yellow, and red women and men are way underrepresented. Our political systems, the halls of power, don't look like us. So we got to talk about that. And then this gridiron dinner. It's a big power player dinner that's held in Washington every year. It's become a super spreader event. Yeah, they required that you have the vaccination, but they did not require that you be tested. And so now at least 72 of the most high profile, influential people in the United States all have, wait for it, COVID. So we're going to talk with Dr. Shanita Knighton about that. And we were going to have a discussion, and Dr. Deborah Verholden, we were going to have a discussion about strokes. We're going to have that tomorrow and perhaps the next day, because I've been noticing a lot of young people are having strokes, but a lot of young people are having strokes. And we need to find out, what is a stroke? Are there any warning signs? Are there any medicines that you should take in? Once you find out you have the stroke, you have like 90 minutes to stop permanent damage. But in most of our poorer hospitals and with poor populations, they don't have access to that. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. It's Monday, April 11th, 2022. Let's get to some of these headlines so that we can get some good news from Pastor Marshall Hatch today. Everybody, in Chicago, it's going to be positively spring-like, 58 degrees and cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 58 degrees, mostly sunny. All right, everybody, it's playoffs time. The Timberwolves will be facing off against the Clippers. Good luck, Timberwolves. Praying for you, pulling for you. I'm excited. I love this time of year because so much is going on. You've got hockey, you've got Major League Baseball, you've got soccer, you got it all happening. I love it. The White Sox 10, the Tigers 1. Wow. The Brewers 5, the Cubs 4, a squeaker, and the Twins 10, and the Mariners 4. What a great day in baseball. Everybody, Ukraine is bracing for a major Russian assault. At least that is what CNN is reporting. Russian troops are amassing forces in eastern Ukraine as Western and Ukrainian officials warn a major assault on the region is imminent. Ukrainian President Zelensky said his country is, quote, ready, close quote, for an offensive, urging civilians to evacuate the region. Coronavirus news, in addition to vaccines, boosters, hand washing, and masks, some of those powerful tools against COVID-19 are ventilation and filtration, something that Dr. Shanina Knight and Dr. Deborah Verholden have been trying to talk to us about. Why is it 2 years in that we're just hearing about this? Well, this is what the experts are talking about now. Filtration, according to this CNN report, just like it sounds, is filtering or cleaning the air by removing infected particles. Uh, Ventilation, however, is diluting the air or bringing more fresh air in to reduce the concentration of those particles. So you see that you need filtration and ventilation. Did we change our systems to meet that need? For the most part, we did not. Think about that, everybody. When we're talking about infrastructure, that is what we need. Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen are projected to advance to the second round of the French presidential election. An analysis of early results showed setting up a rematch of the 2017 contest. Emmanuel Macron is a progressive, and Marine Le Pen is far to the right. We will see uh, where France is going to go. Wow, everybody. The current president got 28.6% of the vote, and Le Pen got 23.6. It's going to be quite an exciting race in France. Gun violence plagued the United States again this weekend following several deadly shootings that took place all around the country. 4 people, including 2 teenagers, were shot shortly after a Major League Baseball game in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, on Saturday night. In Illinois, 6 people were found injured after a shooting occurred in a residential neighborhood. People are also investigating a shooting at a birthday party in Indianapolis, where 6 people were shot and 1 person was killed. 2 people were also killed and 10 hospitalized after a targeted attack at a Cedar Rapids, Iowa nightclub. And on and on and on. The violence does not stop. And congratulations to Scotty Scheffler, who won the 2022 Masters Golf Tournament. He's had quite a run over the past month, winning several tournaments. And of course, people are still talking about Tiger Woods, who overcame an injury that threatened his life. Indeed, he almost lost his leg, and yet he was able, at the age of 46, to participate and compete in this Masters tournament. Talk about getting your mind together. Wow, wow, wow. You just love it. You can't stop watching Tiger, Serena, and Venus. Greatness is always wonderful, wonderful to watch because it reminds us of who we really are. You know, God don't make junk. Let us go to Pastor Marshall Hatch. Pastor Marshall Hatch, new Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, new Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church here in Chicago. He's going to give us some good news this morning. How are you?
I am super blessed. Good morning, Santita, and good morning to the radio audience.
Good morning. God bless you. There is so much going on in this Resurrection Week. Resurrection Week. I mean, yesterday was Palm Sunday. We've got Easter Sunday coming up. It's quite a significant time for those of us who really live our spiritual lives in the world of Christendom. How can that, but it's something, this is a touchstone moment, I think, for people all over the world, whether they are in or out of faith, whatever it is. What is the good news today?
The good news today, this Holy Week, this Monday, is, our theme is don't let anyone steal your joy. Now that phrase, don't let anyone steal your joy, everybody who has been, part of Black church for most of their lives are familiar with that phrase. Don't let anyone steal your joy. Now, it's really been interesting because during the hearings of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, that phrase literally became a part of our body politic. For those of us who are part of the Black church, the subculture of the Black church world, we understood exactly the meaningfulness of that phrase in the middle of the hearings when Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was finally encouraged by Senator Cory Booker. And the thing that caught fire, that literally became a part of the national body politic, literally the whole nation went to Black church in that hearing at that moment. Don't let anybody steal is a zest for life, and we're familiar with it through our experience in America as African Americans, as a people for over 400 years that had to fight dehumanization, fight oppression, fight the indignities of being less than human in the eyes of our fellow countrywomen and men. We have had to face those indignities, but find a way to even have joy in the midst of our fight against these forces of oppression. Don't let anybody steal your joy. It's something that emerged from our worship communities, our faith communities. And that joy, of course, is not the same as happiness, but it's much deeper than that. It's a zest for life. Literally, it's the ability to see God working in your behalf, in your favor, even in the worst of times and the worst of circumstances. To maintain a zest for life, a fight for life. Even the people were enslaved, because when I slaved, they were people who were enslaved. They found reasons to celebrate. They still jumped rooms without marriage license and celebrated birthdays without birth certificate, and still got happy in church when W.B. Du Bois called the frenzy, and still did the ring shop, still found reasons to celebrate in the worst of circumstances, because they refused to let anybody steal their joy, their zest for life. Can you imagine? They still birthed babies in those circumstances, meaning they had hope in the midst of it. And so the text in Hebrews 12:2 talks about Jesus, the way that Jesus encountered Calvary. And the scripture says he looked at the cross. And we should look to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. The scripture says in Hebrews 12:2, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame. He found a reason. He found the ability to look through the cross and see the purposes of God and endured it with joy. You know, all of us have been struck by the shameful behavior of those who couldn't appreciate the wonderful moment of the first black woman ascending to the Supreme Court to interpret a constitution that, when it was written, on the social stratum, the black woman was at the bottom, had no agency over her body, was simply a slave breeder. And the way that people are subjected, and we see the same thing in Ukraine, is through terror and rape. Big part of how you subjugate. And black women bore the brunt of that indignity, and no agency over her body. And here was this wonderful moment when the first African-American woman would ascend to the Supreme Court to interpret that very Constitution aspirationally with the lens of those who were born at the bottom of this empire. And some people couldn't appreciate the joy of the moment. That God was moving. And that's why Cory Booker's sermon on the Senate set the nation on fire and took the nation to church, as he said to her, hold your peace. Let the Lord fight your battle, and don't let anybody steal your joy. Amen. The joy of this moment, of this time. I'm finished. I tell you.
I love it. I love it. What did Shirley Caesar say? This joy I have, the world didn't give it to me, and the world cannot take it away. We needed that today. We needed that. I mean, Jewel needs it. Lorraine, Louis Chewy, Zenobia, Joyce, Dave, Fatu over there in Gambia, sending you much love, my sweetie. In the Gambia, excuse me. Sending you all so much love today. This is Pastor Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, professor of theology, brilliant theologian, but He's a great preacher, as you can hear. He's a great preacher. He's not just an academician. He's a great preacher and he's a great pastor. You got to get over to his church. What is the address very quickly, Pastor Hatch?
4301 West Washington Boulevard, Chicago, Illinois, 60624, New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church.
It's a cathedral, everybody. The largest representations of our civil rights martyrs represented in stained glass. The largest representations in the world are at his church. This was one of his projects. And you need to see the four little girls and so many of our martyrs looking down on us as we worship. I love you, Pastor Hatch. Give my love to the First Lady and to your beautiful family. Thank you. Can't wait to have you on this week as we talk about don't let them steal your joy.
Amen.
Amen. God bless you. Reverend Dr. Shanina Knighton, sending you much love today, infection preventionist, research scholar, clinical research scholar at Case Western Reserve University. And of course, she's also a registered nurse and a professor. I don't know how she does it all. And in fact, today we were supposed to be talking about strokes, but tomorrow, I promise you, we are going to do that because we have been talking and we have noticed a lot of people we know are having strokes and a lot of them are young. And if you need access to certain medicines to mitigate the negative effects of strokes, but if you're not wealthy, if you don't have a primary care physician, if you are in a poor area, you don't have access to this. Everybody doesn't suffer, everybody. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. But today I wanted to ask you about this because now infection prevention by many other names is now a part of the news. People are now talking about ventilation and filtration, that this is something that would help save lives and help keep people well. But there's something called the gridiron dinner, Dr. Knighton. And I wanted you to speak to this because the gridiron dinner is like one of the power broker dinners. You have the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you have the gridiron dinner. And they're doing the best that they can. They have these vaccine mandates. They said, if you come to the dinner, you must have had the vaccine. Okay. But that's where they stopped this year. You didn't have to test positive or negative. You didn't have to test for COVID to go to the COVID dinner. Now, Dr. Knighton, now the mayor of New York's got it. They got COVID. 72 people. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. I mean, the numbers just continue. I mean, cabinet members, lawmakers, Congressman Castro of Texas, Adam Schiff, Susan Collins of Maine. I mean, the numbers just continue. I mean, they just continue to pile up. But I was struck by the fact that they did not ask anyone. They demanded that the requirement is that you had the vaccine, but not to test, to find out if you had the COVID virus. What do you make of that?
Good morning. The same thing I've been saying since the beginning of time, and that's the fact that the vaccine helps the individual for which it is, being injected into, but that it doesn't stop spread. Many people don't realize that when you are being vaccinated, the vaccine, of course, is being put inside of your arm. That does not stop your hands from becoming contaminated. That doesn't stop your nose from carrying germs. It doesn't stop your mouth from carrying germs. So a lot of the issues that we're facing right now is simply because we continue to ignore the fact that germs still exist and people can still transmit them. And so when you look at the situation right now, of where even in the midst of people being vaccinated, sharing their vaccination status, us knowing that the boosters were going to wear off after 10 weeks, you would think that more precautions would have been put in place in order to make sure not only were people tested, making sure people were not symptomatic. And what we're seeing right now is just the fact that people, of course, have experienced COVID fatigue. And this is, again, where we start to see privilege start to ensue. Because, again, there are some people that do not have access to health care, but we end up seeing a lot of individuals that do have access to health care saying to themselves, oh, well, guess what? I don't have to worry about getting sick because I know that I can be treated. I know that I can go get adequate care, so I don't care about spreading it. But my problem is this. When you're thinking about the cooks, when you're thinking about the essential workers that are making these events possible, those people should have been screened and been taken care of, because guess what? They're not protecting the servers. So they're not protecting the people that even have to make sure that they're going to enjoy their evening. And so this is, again, a situation where we don't check privilege, a situation where we're not really even thinking about, how safety plays into this without thinking about vaccines as just being the basic thing. So hand hygiene is still important, which we know. And just like hand hygiene is very important, just how you mentioned the whole thing with the ventilation that's happening right now, this has been since the beginning of time. And remember, we were concerned about sending those kids back into those old school buildings.
Yeah.
So now that we're back in this situation again, it's just perplexing that ventilation is now coming up at the top of the conversation when we were already saying along that it should have been something that was included in that infrastructure bill.
Everybody, it seems like we have gotten this all bass-ackwards. We have to think about that. I keep trying to tell you, you can have your shots, but it does not stop you from getting COVID. It does not stop you from spreading COVID. You've got to understand that. And you make the point, Dr. Knighton. Wait a minute. We're counting the high-profile people at the dinner, but what about the servers? If that became a super spreader event for the people who were eating at the dinner, what about the people who were in close contact, getting them their food, getting them something to drink, showing them into the ballroom? What about them? Are they on this count too? No, they're not. They're not being counted, but they do count. They do matter. Whew. Something to think about. What did you say? Check your privilege. Everybody, speaking of privilege, Dr. Knighton, did you know that the United States is 30% white male? Real quick, you got 5 seconds to answer. What is the percentage of white men who hold elective office?
I'll be honest, I think it's somewhere like in the 80s or 90s.
Well, you were almost there. 62%. 62.
Oh, wow.
They're 30.
I thought it was higher than that.
Well, you know what? That's because we made a whole lot of progress, but it's something for you to think about. 30% of America is white male. 62% of the office holders are white male. 62%. There's something off in the power dynamic. The halls of power do not look like most of us, and that includes white women. So we're not trying to take anything away from everybody. What we're trying to do is add to. Make America what it's really supposed to be. People need to be in the conversation. That's why Ketanji Brown Jackson's elevation to the Supreme Court is very, very important. That's why her speech, in which she put herself in the line of those who descended from slavery, that's why that was so important. We got to talk about that on the other side of the break. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dr. Knighton, please give me your friend's number because I'm going to call her. I apologize, girl. I was running yesterday and I'm running today. I apologize. No. I apologize because I want to call her personally and apologize. Really, please let me do that. Because I really did. I did not mean to do that. I was so exhausted. Of course, I sat down, crossed my legs, boom, fell asleep. So I was
right. No, I get it.
Oh my gosh.
No, I get it.
And I was like, wait, whoa. When you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, what time is it? Did I miss the show? Yeah, you guys, I get really exhausted, and I'm working on changing that around. How about that? Getting the assistance, getting the support that I need. But yeah, those numbers are pretty interesting, aren't they?
They are, but I'm gonna tell you, didn't know that it was that high. But I'm gonna be honest, it explains too. And I'm saying this in the non-biased manner to your listeners, but I'll be honest, the culture of why a lot of these decisions are being made and like why they one-track minded, like it doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
Absolutely. Okay.
I bet you at that dinner, Santita, I bet you they had the observe trade running around.
Oh, trust me.
Spreading COVID. I bet you they was talking over food. I bet you people were shaking hands. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with these people. Like, they really think that we're not in the pandemic.
Yeah.
But I never understood it from the beginning how you can go to a networking event and you literally are sitting there talking to somebody and y'all are eating food and you walking around shaking hands and there's no hand sanitizing in between, but y'all are eating like finger food.
I was just at one of those. I was just at one of those dinners last week, and I want you to know, people were not masked. Some people were. I was masked. And I'm like, y'all, really?
If you ain't masked, then hands. I told somebody, I said, even if you're not masked, what you doing with your hands is so important. Like
60 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but do you see why I'm trying to remind people every day? You see, because I'm like, people keep people, out of sight, out of mind, but you go into these dinners and see, because the boosters are wearing off, I'm wondering, okay, if the protection is wearing off, are people going to start really getting sick again? Yeah,
they are, but the problem is if they don't have access to tests to be able to display it, is that then if it's going to be masked and then being diagnosed with something else. So it's a lot of unknowns in the situation, unfortunately.
And people are not going to get boosted every 3 months. That's not going to happen. So something's got to happen here. But you know what? Let me bring this up. Just keep listening. Keep listening. Stay right here. Woo! Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let us talk about power in the United States of America. For the first time in the history of the Republic, since the Republic was founded, the United States Supreme Court will not be majority white male. That's right. That is the court onto which Ketanji Brown Jackson will ascend. Now, mind you, that's phenotype. Now, philosophy, it's a 6-3 conservative court. For all intents and purposes, you really, on one level, just don't put Clarence Thomas with Black people. But you should, because he represents a strain of Black thought. He just does. He does. That having been said, so phenotypically, it will not be majority white. It will not be white male, shall I say. It is majority white. It will not be majority white male. It will not be majority male. It's interesting. But let's dig down in these numbers. There's a reflective democracy campaign study that shows that white men represent 30% of America's population, but 62% of the office holders. Now, women represent 51% of the United States population, but we're 31% of the office holders. People of color represent 40% of the United States, 13% of the office holders. That's it. Now, our union is more perfect today. And of course, we were so excited to hear Ketanji Brown Jackson and this magnificent speech that she gave on Friday, in which she connected herself to her ancestors who had been in slavery. We've not really heard that before. It's rare that we hear someone who's on such a big stage, who acknowledges it. One of my favorite shows on the Food Network, Delicious Miss Cartier. She has a wonderful show, young Black woman out of Savannah, Georgia. And she said, she is always trying to find ways to connect her recipes to her people who are Gullah, who are really very, very connected to their African roots, to their African moorings. And she said, but the people at the Food Network are like, don't really talk about the slavery thing too much. She said, I guess they're not ready. Many of us are not ready, but we need to get ready, because this is American history. This is America's history. This is America's history. And America is changing as we speak. We're waiting for it. We're going to get Attorney Robert Patillo, but I've got my girl, Attorney Erin Connolly. brilliant lawyer, political organizer. Indeed, she is working on a political campaign now. I want to get her congressional candidate, one of our young leading lights in the Latino community, who's going to be with us. So we can talk with Miss Delia. I cannot wait to hear what she is seeing and what she plans to do once she gets to Washington. And of course, you've got Dave Daly, New York Times bestselling author from Fair Vote and Salon. And of course, his New York Times bestseller, Rat Effed, I Want You to Get It. If you want to know the true story of the secret plan to steal our democracy, he lays it out. Unrigged, how Americans are fighting back to save our democracy. He lays it out. Let's get right to it. Aaron, are you surprised that white men represent 30% of the United States population, but 62% of the office holders? I want you all to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Attorney Aaron Connolly.
Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning to this wonderful panel. Thank you for having this important conversation this morning, because as someone who is often the only woman on panels myself, I'm not surprised at this statistic. I've been at women in politics discussions where I'm literally the only woman, and there's maybe 10 women in the room, and I call it out, but it's part of the problem, right? That we have this over-representation, not only of the white male patriarchy that has defined our society for so long, right? But there's this assumption that is who the person in power is going to be immediately, right? Oftentimes as professionals too, we have this assumption. When you say, I found this great doctor, you don't say, oh, what's her name? You don't say, I found this great attorney that can help you. Oh, what is her name? What is, it's often you have this archetype of a white male person in power, whether it's whatever that position is. So this statistic goes from it's very similar from the federal level all the way to the municipal level, which is often what we assume there's more women represented at the municipal level, right? But that number is still 30% that the Center for American Women in Politics has defined as well. So this argument sometimes that we hear that, oh, there's women on school boards and local city council, and that's, women just don't rise to the level of power for this reason or that reason, or Black men or Latino men, are in the same boat, right? And we look at some of these graphs and statistics, and we see white male, we see female represented, and then we see people of color that are all lumped together in their own category, because we don't even want to get into details of what it says, how many folks we have from the Black community representing us at City Council. We don't want to say that there is 0.2% in some municipalities. So we put all of the people of color together, right? And that needs to change too. We have to be honest with this data and see which communities are represented by the leaders in power, right? We see the effectiveness in community organizing when we send someone from that neighborhood to talk to their neighbors. They get better feedback on the doors. They get better conversations, because these are folks that understand what it's like to live in that neighborhood. And it's the same for your elected officials. We should absolutely be more accurately represented in all levels of power. And while this week, Santita, I must say, just seeing your father, seeing your family experience this historic moment was amazing. But as you said, the makeup of the court, while not predominantly white males at this point, still has that white male point of view. So the first step is making sure that we have that accurate representation, but we also have to be honest within that makeup of folks. Are these the right women? Are these the people that have our values that we're putting into power? Or are we satisfying some, visual quota when the actual policy and lived experience of these folks is more focused on that patriarchal piece than representing the will of the people, right? So I think there's a few things to unpack here, but absolutely, I'm not surprised at this statistic, but the trend line and the fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that we're measuring this data many years ago, we didn't even have these statistics, especially on the local level, and we still need more information and more data about what that means for folks of color. We're making strides in gathering some of those important pieces about women's representation, but they still don't have accurate data on the local level of how folks are represented by people of color. So we still have some work to do.
Yeah, because we are so underrepresented. David Daly, your thoughts? Because while we are justifiably proud of Ketanji Brown Jackson and excited about this moment, that's a shift in phenotype. We still have a long ways to go in terms of a philosophical shift, because she is, as a Black woman, joining a 6-3 conservative majority, or should I say a corporatist majority, because that's really what it is. And I think we have to look at that, because we're going to have to begin to grow beyond phenotype and get to philosophy. But 30% of the population, white male, 62% of the office holders. I mean, the people who control the power conversations are still white men, David.
Well, good morning, Santita. I want to thank you first of all for having me on this morning to mansplain the problem of overrepresentation.
That's right. You go on and mansplain. Mansplain. Come on.
I think you and Aaron did a nice job, but let me explain how it actually works.
Okay. He's mansplaining everybody. That's right. He's putting Aaron and I in our place. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right. This infects every level of our politics. It infects every level of our nation. It affects every level of our power structure, right? I mean, you're talking about 41 of 50 governors being white men. 47 of 50 governors are white. You're talking about 70% of state legislatures. And so much of this starts with the history of voting in this country. I mean, you did not have the right to vote automatically in this country from day one. If you were a white man of property, you were allowed to vote. And this did not change for women until 100 years ago. It really did not change for blacks in America until the Voting Rights Act in 1965. And we've seen how that has been whittled away. You see the advantages that incumbency bestows upon white men in office, whether that is easier access to campaign finance, whether it is the ability to gerrymander and to draw your own district, whether it is all of the kinds of work-life balance questions that have been baked into the American workplace, as far as who takes care of children, daycare. So much of this is falling to women. And so the time to go out and run for office is men who have been given those opportunities again and again and again, and they continue to bestow them on other women.
But but the presumption, it's clear that the presumption of power still rests with white men. It still rests with white men. And I'm wondering, and while we've made some progress, it's not just, it's culture, it's in the culture, Aaron and David. It's in the culture. And it's something that's got to shift. I mean, because, and I think we've got to continue to expand the conversation, because Clarence Thomas is not in the mainstream of Black thought, but he does represent a strand of Black thought. So I can appreciate that. That having been said, I think what is concerning is that 30% of the U.S. population is white male. 62% of those who control the conversation in the halls of power, Aaron, are white men. And I think that should be concerning. So they're discussing reproductive rights for women. They're discussing, they're the ones who control the discussion on the education of our children. They're the ones who control these discussions on our work conditions. They're the ones who control the discussion. And that's not healthy, Aaron.
No, and when we're talking about representation and male, female, people of color being at the table, what we're really talking about is what is your lived experience. And when we had this really important conversation related to Justice Jackson's nomination, several times this became kind of the issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we're making decisions about big things like healthcare, student loan payments that are going to impact families' wealth for generations, right? When we're talking about prescription coverage, when we're talking about child care costs, when we're talking about housing as a human right, we need people at the table that have a different experience than the white, male, patriarchal, and often privileged viewpoint, right? So we need folks that understand what it's like to be disabled, what it's like to not speak the language that the rest of your family speaks as a first language. We need people that understand the struggle of not being able to get the full education that they want and having to work and go to school at the same time. We need to have people that understand what it's like to work 3 jobs and still not make ends meet for your family. And the table has to look a little different to get those perspectives, make policies that are really, really serving the needs of the people, right? Because even if you take a male and female in the same house, let's say they are white, okay, and the male has the societal normal job, going out 9 to 5, providing for the family. Let's say this family has a disabled child. I'm guessing the woman in that household is going to have a very different experience in caring for that disabled child than the man, right? So both of them in a position of power are going to bring very different perspectives and understanding. And we need more of that diversity. That's the richness of diversity. And we will have better ideas. We will be able to innovate better. We will be able to have a better budget because we'll understand what is actually necessary versus putting a policy branded Band-Aid on something that really is going to make a situation worse. Okay? So my concern is that when we have this overrepresentation of one or a very limited perspective, even folks that are doing their best to represent the people, right, that are going out into the community and doing their best to get those different experiences, we still need people in power at the table negotiating to fight for these things. And that is why in my work in politics, I try to decenter my worldview and bring other folks to the table, empower those types of things, because that is how our democracy is built. That's how you built the Rainbow Coalition, right? The Rainbow Push Coalition is an amazing example of why we need this, because we are better when our different viewpoints are all at the table together and we have respect for it. And we will only have respect for that if it's another person in the same powerful position, right? It's not going to be the same if it's just a junior staffer bringing up this idea to a person. We need those people in power, in Congress, in the state house, as governors of states in this country. And we need our young people to see that. That makes an impact. When you see someone who looks like you, who has your lived experience, that lights something inside of you as a young person and says, I don't have to be as afraid. They've already done the hard part. I see myself in them, and I can do it too. And that's what we heard from Black women throughout this country this week, and it was amazing to see that. But it's taken too long, and our work needs to be bringing more voices to the table to run for office, to be able to start in these municipal positions, and then build that bench up so we have leadership that looks like us.
David, Uh, I'm struck by the fact that when you see these numbers, it to me it helps you to understand political power, right? And how people of color and women underutilize ours. I mean, look, we wouldn't have Ketanji Brown Jackson uh, ascending to the Supreme Court were it not for people of color, Black people, and Black women in particular, showing up and showing out in November of 2020. That them is the facts. That having been said, how do we begin to marshal? I mean, really, I mean, when you see, I'm a numbers person, and when I pull numbers like this, I'm like, you need to hear this every day. That when you look at the television, when you look at those who are walking up and down the halls of City Hall and your state legislatures, the halls of Congress, and even the White House, this is not what America looks like. It, this is not what America is like. That's how you know the laws are real off. They don't resonate with people because they're not speaking to the people. This is not how most people live, and these are not our opinions. What are your thoughts? I mean, how can we begin to really wrap our minds around the political power that people of color, that women, uh, all of this power that, Reverend Jackson, when he was running for president and when he was about to run for president in 1983, he said, you are David. The system is Goliath. You've got all these rocks just lying around and they're called your vote. Pick up your rock, put it in your slingshot, and strike the blow. What can we do?
I really admire organizations like Run for Something that are teaching and training the next generation of Americans, young people of color, to get out and run for office, and giving them the tools and the advice and the know-how and the encouragement to get out and do it. Because I think you're exactly right. It's seeing Justice Jackson. You could see it all over Facebook and social media all weekend. Just the pride with which people were able to post these photos and that title, and to understand that there was someone who looked like them in that position of power. That is incredibly influential and important, and it is going to birth another generation of activists who are going to be able to imagine themselves in that position. It was inspiring to see the first female manager in baseball over the weekend. A woman managing the Tampa Tarpons, the Class A affiliate of the New York Yankees. That's the first time. But it's not as if every other man has always been more qualified for those jobs. And that was what was so disgusting about so much of what we saw from Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the media, talking about how, there ought to be an asterisk next to Judge Jackson because men and white women and gay men simply weren't considered for this position. Every other, until 1967, I believe it was, every justice on the Supreme Court was a white man.
And that seemed like it was the prerequisite, David. The prerequisite was that they be white and male.
For the first 200 years of our nation, and that this is just now beginning to change is great news. But it was a long time coming, and what we're going to have to do is fight to consolidate and continue to expand this power so that, I often say that,
if you are a white male in this country, it's like being a blue chip stock. You know, your General Electric, your Coca-Cola, your status never really seems to decrease. And yet what we're seeing right now is such a backlash and such insecurity from white men in this country at some of these advancements. And you can see the rise of Donald Trump, right? So there's a backlash growing inside our politics at the same time to this historic, long overdue advancement.
You know, everybody, I want to know what your thoughts are. We're going to have Robert Patillo join us in just a couple of minutes to tell us what he thinks. 30% of the United States is white male. 62% of the office holders are white male. What does that say to you? And I tell you what, getting registered to vote helps to change that power dynamic. This is not about taking anything away from anybody. And it's sad that I have to say that, but it's true because people feel threatened. But what is threatening is that most Americans are not being heard. America truly is a great nation, and it can really be even greater when you begin to include everybody who is here in all of the processes that make this country work. You need poor people. You need people who have credit problems, who are running for office and who get in there. That's why you need a publicly funded election system. You need all of that. You need not just a change in phenotype, you need a change in philosophy. That's right. And let people, I don't want to exclude conservatives from the court. No, they should be there. But this whole process has gotten far too politicized on every level. And we're not winning. We're not winning. And Americans need to win. And the way we win is when you have a system where everybody's in and nobody is out. In a special way, I'm sending much love to Eric Bollard's family today, David Daly. I just found out very late last week that he had made his transition. He was a brilliant media critic, one of the founders of Salon, and I know a friend of yours. We just love him and appreciate all of his service. And we are going to continue to hold up the banner of media for the people. You have corporate media, we're media for the people. Thank you, Eric Bollard, for all that you did to open the door, to lay the foundation, to pave the road, and to get us in and to keep us going. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Devin?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, no, not at all. I couldn't hear you. So.
Okay, that was worrisome. I'm like, no, she's quiet too. What's going on here?
Okay. Okay, so do we have everybody? We have Robert.
Good morning.
Hi, how you doing, hon?
I'm great.
Great. I'm so glad you're with us today. And of course, you're joining Aaron Connolly. You've got Aaron Connolly and David Daly. Angela, that's right. Inclusion is the key. Inclusion is the key. It is the key. You want everybody in. You don't want anybody out. That's how we grow. That's how we get better. When you hear all of the opinions, and I'm not for excluding anyone from the table of discussion. I believe you need to have everybody. You need to have everybody because everybody's got something to say. But right now, we're all into blocking people. We're not into locking people in. And that to me is dangerous. That's dangerous. And we've got to grow. We've got to be bigger. My father often says you can't be big and little at the same time. Only God knows all. Okay? So let us begin to swing wide the gates of opportunity. That is what Dorothy Height, the former head of the National Council of Negro Women, said. Swing open wide the gates of opportunity. Open them up and let everybody in and make the process fair. Make the process fair. You know, Aaron, because I have to tell you, I don't like groupthink, okay? I'm just not into it. I'm not into it at all. You know, I'm not into it. I can't hear her And I need you I need you a little louder, David. Can I hear you again, Aaron?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, it's much louder. And David, can I hear you?
Okay. A little high.
Okay, if you can speak again.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. That's much better. That's much better. Much, 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 much better. Yeah, but I just, I think that I think we've got to open the door so everybody is included. Everybody needs to be here enriched. I have to tell you, I had a wonderful experience at Fox News. Did I agree with everybody? No. Some people didn't want me back on their shows because they could not fight with me the way that they. And I realized I was a proxy for Reverend in many instances, but they could not fight with me the way one man in particular, who had a huge show there, he couldn't fight with me the way he thought he was going to fight with me. I'm like, I don't have a beef with you. I just disagree with you. That's all. And I've got the data to back up my opinions. How about that? So I'm not going to get emotional about this. No, because I think that you are operating from an incorrect set of facts. And I told him so. How about that? And when you say it in a calm way, it kind of throws people off. But that's okay. But at least there was space for me to say the things that I needed to say. I mean, look, everybody, you have no friends in media. Okay. Just know that. It's corporate media and it's the rest of us. So I want you to listen to Robert Patillo's show every Sunday from 1 to 4 on WAOK, the iconic talk radio station down in Atlanta. You hear some of the best and most stirring conversations on all of radio. Please, please, please go on and hear him out. We're going to have Ray McGovern on. I can't wait to hear his thoughts about Ukraine. He was the chair of the National Intelligence Estimates Board. Now, what did that mean? That meant that as a CIA analyst, he was in charge of briefing the president to begin his day. Every day. That is what he did. And he was a Russian specialist. So I've had him on before, and I want to hear his thoughts about what he sees because he's an expert in the space. Can't wait to hear his thoughts. And he is an ardent peace activist, co-founder of Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. It'll be interesting for him to tell us about the origins of the CIA and how it is so far away from its mission, its original mission. Hey, I come from the civil rights movement. The CIA gives me the willies. All those alphabets do. But it's always interesting to hear yet again another perspective, Aaron and David. And Robert, but I tell you, when I hear CIA, I go, ah! Okay, that's what I do. Because I am someone from the civil rights community, and I grew up with that. And oh my gosh, whew, it was you just know that you're surveilled, and that's never a good feeling. Never, never, never. So. There we go. And you all just saw one of my mini freezers. During the pandemic, I bought 2 mini freezers so that I could have chicken and have all of my staples. Yes, I look like a survivalist. I've got canned beans, canned tuna, sardines, all the things that my mother told me to get, grits. Even though I don't really eat them anymore. But my mother said, you must have grits, you must have rice, you must have this, you must have that. If you go into my parents' house, she said, look, your father and I are ready because I'm ready. She said, I don't know about you all. So, and now that if you go to the store and you see these empty shelves, I can see my mother was much sharper than I even knew. Stand by, everybody.
Seconds.
I love tuna, D-Ray. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Monday, April 11th, 2022. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet my morning stars, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars. That's right, D-Ray, and I do love tuna. But it needs to be white, and it needs to be, well, I'll get into that another time, but I do like it, but not mushy. Oh, you're right. I like tuna steaks. Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please like and subscribe there. And meet me on my Facebook page, the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That is the official page. The other page is where everybody continues to try to be my friend. I can't accept any more friends, and they continue to kick you all off. Would you please spread the word to become my friend on the Santita Jackson and Friends page? Please, please, please. Call me at 773-763-9278. We have this tremendous panel, Attorney Aaron Connolly and David Daly from Salon in Fairvote, and Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, civil rights lawyer. Indeed, Aaron is a political organizer involved in a lot of campaigns all around the country. But Attorney Robert Patillo, radio host WAOK in Atlanta, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, civil rights lawyer. We're talking about the fact that 30% of America's population is white male, but 62% of the office holders are white male. There's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect. And so we're going to talk about that, everybody. And we're going to have Ray McGovern. Who is he? He is the former CIA analyst who chaired National Intelligence Estimates. Who are they? He was in charge of briefing the president, 3 presidents. He was part of the CIA for 27 years. And he has, as I've brought him to you before, thoughts and experience with Russia and Ukraine and that part of the world. And we want to hear from him because he can give us some insights into what we are seeing. I want you to call me. Text me at 773-763-9278. Let's get some of these headlines so we can get back to the show. Chicago, it'll be positively spring-like today, everybody. 58 degrees, cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 58 degrees, mostly sunny. Go ahead, Minneapolis, St. Paul. In the NBA, well, the playoffs have begun. Love it. Congratulations to the Timberwolves. Ranked number 7, they will be facing off against the number 8 Clippers. Go Timberwolves. Loving you. And of course, in baseball, the White Sox, boy, oh boy, did they have a good time yesterday. 10, the White Sox. The Tigers won. The Brewers, well, they were triumphant over our Cubs, 5-4. And the Twins, well, they had a great time over the Mariners, 10-4, everybody. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-9278. What do you make of the fact that 30% of America is white male, 62% of those who hold office are white males? Something is kind of disconnected there. White House officials are getting anxious about a massive migrant surge that will likely occur at the U.S.-Mexico border next month. That's interesting because they are now about to admit 100,000 Ukrainians to the United States. I wonder what that's about. Of course, we will have to examine that. Russian troops are amassing forces in eastern Ukraine as Western and Ukrainian officials warn a major assault on the region is imminent. Did you see UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who visited President Zelensky? Many people are calling for President Biden to visit. What do you think about that? I want you to call me, text me at 773-763-9278. Personally, I wanted to stay in the United States. That's right. In addition to vaccines, boosters, hand washing, and masks, some of the most powerful tools against COVID are ventilation and filtration, something we've really not talked about. Filtration is filtering or cleaning the air by removing infected particles. Ventilation is diluting the air or bringing in fresh air at opposite ends of your home that will create cross ventilation. When you're in these cars, you should have a window on one side open, a window on the other side open. A lot of people are not doing that. We're going to be talking about that more and more with Dr. Shanina Knight, and she's been telling you that infection prevention is the key. And you need to look at that because one of the biggest, most prestigious dinners in all of Washington, D.C., you got the White House Correspondents' Dinner. They have a vaccine requirement. And they also, thankfully, have a COVID-19 test requirement. You have to test negative. Well, the Gridiron Dinner had no such requirement. They said, okay, You have to be vaccinated in order to come. But no, you don't have to take the test. Just be vaccinated. Well, guess what? Now, the numbers continue to grow. 72% of the guests, we haven't even talked about those people who served there. Thank you, Dr. Knighton, for reminding us of that. 72% of guests, the latest high profile guest is New York City Mayor Eric Adams. They all tested positive for COVID. And the numbers are growing, everybody. The numbers are growing. They're growing. Why didn't they get tested to find out if they were positive or not? I mean, that's so simple. Keep trying to tell you the shots protect you from getting very ill. But with these boosters, with the shots waning in their effectiveness, we have to really explore that too. You have to figure out ways to really increase the baseline of your health. And know that you need to be tested all the time. You need to know what if people are COVID negative or not. You need to know that. Well, Robert Patillo is joining us, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. He's joining David Daley, New York Times bestselling author of Rat Eft, the true story of the secret plan to steal our democracy. That's right. Republicans said on the night that Barack Obama won, they said, you can have the presidency, but we are going to overtake the state houses, the state legislatures, and we're going to control districting all across the country. And that is what they have done. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. And they are shifting our individual politics right. You got to think about that. What does all of that mean? And then, of course, Attorney Erin Connolly. She is a brilliant political organizer, organizes all over the country. She's working in one of the most exciting races in the country, where we're seeing a young Latina really begin to come into prominence, and we're very excited about that. We're going to have Miss Dahlia on my show. I cannot wait to talk with her and see what she envisions for her district and what she plans to do once she gets to Washington, everybody. Let me go to you, Robert Patillo. White men represent 30% of the population, but they are 62% of the office holders in the United States. They are dominating the conversations in the halls of power. Women are 51% of the U.S. population, but we're 31% of the office holders. People of color are 40% of the U.S. population, 13% of the office holders. It just doesn't sound right, Robert.
You're absolutely right. I think that Aaron and David did a great job of articulating the issues. I think something that has to be added in is the fact that you have this overrepresentation of the super elderly in American politics. That the average age of the United States senator is about 63 years old. And that's including some of the young bucks who are in there. When you're looking at Chuck Grassley, who's been in the Senate forever. When you're looking at some of the other people in leadership who are in their 70s and 80s years old, it becomes very difficult when we're having public policy conversations about cryptocurrency, for example, or blockchain and NFTs and how we're going to regulate those. Many of the issues that affect the rest of America when you have a very much a Great Depression mentality governing American politics. If you look at the House of Representatives, which is supposed to be kind of the more young, wild representation of the people, still the average age of a congressperson is about 58 years old. If you look at the top leadership of America, we have a nearly 80-year-old president. The leader of the Republican Party, Donald Trump's about 75 years old. Bernie Sanders, kind of the progressive stalwart, is 80-plus years old. Even a young whippersnapper like Elizabeth Warren is 72 years old. So in addition to the domination of white men in politics, we have a domination of older white men going into elderly white men still running the country. And that's part of what negates our political conversations. Even this conversation we'll have about immigration is used as an example because that's that's always an issue of conservative politics. If you look at America, we've had over 1 million people leave the workforce because of COVID, because they're just dead and they're not here. And they're not coming back to their jobs. You had 4 million people leave in 2021 because of the Great Resignation, because in America, particularly younger people, have figured out that if I'm going to be working at 9 to 5, making $15 an hour, I can also drive Uber, I can also make T-shirts in my spare time, I can put a song on SoundCloud, I can make money doing TikTok and control my own schedule. And so going to the traditional workforce is no longer something which is advantageous. So if you look at the immigration issue that we have, Americans, for white Americans in particular, have a negative population growth. So we need literally as much immigration into America as possible Southeast Asia and then Sub-Saharan Africa, and we want to really be competitive in the second half of the 21st century. But we have people who still have this 1940s, 1950s mindset. We need to keep America racially pure. We can't let all these other people come in. And that's what's dominating our public policy. So instead of us being able to have a realistic conversation on immigration, wages, guest worker programs, DACA, pathway to citizenship, while also addressing these negative externalities such as drug trafficking, human trafficking, weapons coming into the country, then also working with the other nations within our hegemonic sphere of influence and having a summit to knock out an agreement, we're still addressing it the same way we were talking about immigration in the 1980s. And this is the problem when you have political leadership that is not the same age and not the same generation, that doesn't understand the modern political issues the way that younger people would. So in addition to having white men having a disproportionate effect on American politics, we have to look at the age gap between our politicians and the rest of the American populace. And also we have to look at the fact that most of the wealth in this country is still controlled by older white men. Most of the real estate in this country is still controlled by older white men. And that's not changing anytime soon. So we really need to look at what is the promise being left to millennials and Generation Z and Generation Alpha. We still have baby boomers controlling the economy and hoarding the majority of the prosperity of America.
What do you think, everybody? 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You know what? Attorney Aaron Connolly and David Daly, I want to bring in a couple of callers, and I want everyone to respond to them. Anita, how you doing? What's on your mind, sweetie?
Good morning. How are you?
It's wonderful hearing your voice always.
Wonderful you and all your guests too. I wanted to say, not just them 62%, but the attitude they have about family, everyone doesn't follow that. Even if it was 62% and they knew how to protect everybody. Because there is such thing called leadership where people understand humanly what's going on. And we got people in Russia exploding in this country. We got people inside the country trying to tear up the White House because someone's not protecting the interests of not enough people and saying they're religious and they're all incompetent, and they're not doing that. So it's not how many of them it is that they're not protecting the people. You know, it could be a few protecting everyone, or it could be many protecting everyone, but there's not people being there and not protecting anyone.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it would be helped if we had people who were like Stacey Abrams, who said, look, I don't have a lot of money and I am having trouble paying my bills. People like that who run for office, people who are poor who run for office. Do you think we would be helped by that?
Well, first of all, we're all paying taxes, or we're donating some kind of way. We're getting paid low wages and helping the people that are working the high wage jobs. You have child care workers, like you said, service people. You know, these people need housing. Right now they're having marches in Chapel Hill about no affordable housing. There's easy building housing that's over $2,000 a month.
Well, wait a minute. Well, hold on. Well, then let me ask you this, because this is happening all over the country. Do you think it would be helpful if we had some of those people who are marching, who are struggling, if they were in office? Do you think office holders should look like Americans?
If they think like your father, yeah. If they don't think like your father, with it protecting everyone and understanding the history of everyone, they're not going to help.
Thinking,
if they're going to be more wise like your dad, then yeah, I think they would be helpful. We need people that know how to help in office right now.
Well, I like that. We love you, Anita. Let me go to Dave. Dave from Chicago. Dave, what's on your mind today?
Talking to me?
Yes, Dave. I'm talking to you.
No, this is not Dave, baby. You got the wrong name.
Okay, well, this is the name that I've been given. What is your name?
James.
Okay, James, how you doing? What's on your mind, James?
I'm doing without. First of all, there's no such thing as a white man, black man, yellow man, red man. The only white man I saw was the Joker. They use these colors to dehumanize you.
Mm-hmm.
They make a human being a color. That way they can kill you, they terrorize you by your color. And that's what we're seeing. When was America a great nation? I can't get nobody to win. America is a racist, white supremacist, psychopath empire. What's so great about that? I need somebody to tell me. What great nature go all over the world killing people, dehumanizing people, poisoning their air, their water? What's so great about that? And let me tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Hitler, Mussolini, Trump, is a puppet. He don't run his empire. The empire put him in. They'll make me the president if they want to. They'll make you the president, Santita.
Mm-hmm.
They run this empire.
Well, it is a control. It is a control system. Well, well, hold on, Robert. Why don't you respond to James?
Well, I think partially correct, but we have to remember we didn't create these criteria that they put us into. We didn't show up at the Port of Savannah in 1600 and somewhere around there and say, well, we want to be the black people here. No, we were kidnapped. We're taken here. We're put into these criteria and these categories, and because of that, we have to figure out how to operate within the system, which still divides us along those lines. Or disproportionately, the economic opportunity, the political opportunity, the business opportunities lie with a certain group of older white males in this country. And when we look at what has caused the decreases in this and the increase in minority representation, has been through political action. That was not for the affirmative action programs in the 1970s and 1980s, the quote-unquote racial preferences that were put in place in college admissions, the quota systems that were so promoted by conservatives to open the door for minority representation going forward. We will not see the process of America evening out, because even though it is still 30% of white men in this country control 60% of offices. If you go back to the 1950s, that would be about 90 to 95% of offices nationwide. So we have made progress, and we have to not be afraid to have these conversations so we can push across the finish line to make sure that the leadership of this country looks the same way that the country actually looks and can push through public policy, which is the benefit of the majority of Americans, not simply a small coterie of people who have access to the complex civil protection.
David Daley, New York Times bestselling author, this power dynamic, it really does come down to the vote. And this is something about which you argue passionately. You said if you don't have access to the vote, your citizenry, your citizenship is really, you don't have it. It's important for us to remember that when African Americans were freed from slavery, first, black men technically were freed, not black women. But you got, first you had the amendment that freed us from slavery. Okay, but if you go to jail, you become a slave again. And then you actually became a citizen. That's right. You got because they were trying to send us back to Africa. And so that had to be established. But then we got the right to vote. 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, David. All of these things are tied together. And wow, we've made progress with 30% of the United States. That just seems, that's amazing.
And there was a really important case on the Voting Rights Act that went before the U.S. Supreme Court in 2013. And what Chief Justice John Roberts said was, well, it's not 1965 in America anymore. It's not the old days of the South. Things have changed. And he undid, effectively eviscerated the preclearance provisions that had protected the right to vote. Some of the states and localities around the nation that had the most intense history of racial bias. And so we have made some progress, and yet every time we make some progress, there are those who are ready to say, stop, that progress is done enough. progress is being made. The threat to our democracy right now is an unraveling of that right to vote, but also just a growing specter of white minority rule that you see being enacted around the nation. And by that, I mean institutions and structures that are baked into the country that have this intense white bias. The U.S. Senate, 2 seats for every state, which dramatically overrepresents the interests of older, whiter, rural, conservative America. That U.S. Senate, every state gets 2 extra electors in the electoral college as a result of that. So it pushes the electoral college in the direction of the smaller, whiter, rural states. As we have seen on the filibuster, whether it's on voting rights or policing or student debt or immigration, the filibuster in the Senate gives that white rural minority of the country effectively a veto power over
everybody else. I've got about 30 seconds.
So we are becoming a more multiracial nation. The question is whether we can ever become a multiracial democracy. And our history on this is not great.
You know, we're going to continue to have this conversation, everybody, going forward, because America really needs to, our halls of power need to look like us. That's why I believe in having a publicly funded election system, Robert, David, and Aaron. Because if you have the desire to serve, you ought to be able to do it. You ought to be able to do it. So let's think about that. Coming up, Ray McGovern. Who was he? He was the CIA analyst who briefed the president. So I want you to know what the national intelligence estimates, of which he was chair. I want you to know what it is. And his specialty was Russia. We've had him on before, but I think it bears listening. You need to listen to him. You've seen him arrested, pushing for peace. He's the co-founder of the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. He said, we're way off the rails here. We got to talk about Ukraine and just where our foreign policy is and what we're doing, everybody. More on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Beautiful people, thank you so much for being with me today. Oh, thank you. I know Sunday's a hard day for you, but I figured I wanted the 3 of you in this conversation today. Thank you so much for being with us. Oh, look, you all are the best. You are the best. And David, we need to do something with that because that is tied to our vote. You know? So when people say that, that none of this matters, it's like, no, it really does. And you need to know. That you're underrepresented. You're much more powerful than you even know. You're much more powerful than you know. Thank you. And Aaron, let's get your candidate on my show, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's do that this week. No, let's do it this week. Let's just work with me on it because I know you've got a lot going on, but work with me on that. Okay?
Okay. Let me chat with her today.
Okay, great. No, because I think we've been talking about it. Okay. We have Mr. McGovern, Brother Ray, like Ray Charles. That's it.
Santita,
yes.
how are you?
I just made you Ray Charles. What an elevation. Brother Ray.
Sorry, what?
I just elevated you to iconic status. You're already an icon. Brother Ray, that's Ray Charles. Woo.
Brother Ray is a real honor. I've heard you people call me that, except people in my neighborhood here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, well, I was born in the Big G in Greensboro when my parents were in school. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, my brother Jesse was born in Greenville, South Carolina. My father didn't want to leave my mother alone. When he went to the Selma March when he was at graduate school at the University of Chicago. So off she went to Greenville to be with his parents, and my brother Jesse was born down there. But I was born in the Big G. That's right. In the L. Richardson Hospital for Colored Women. I'm aging myself, but that's all right. Had it not been for that hospital, it could have been a problem. So,
as you know, Greensboro has a wonderful, wonderful civil rights history.
Mhm.
Tragic though it be, the initial sit-ins and awards and
Oh, yeah.
all kinds of stuff. We're talking about the same Greensboro.
The same Greensboro. I mean, and I know my
60 seconds.
my parents they have so many wonderful memories of their time in Greensboro. And we even went by the first place my parents were able to afford when they got married. It was in a housing project in Greensboro. And my mother showed us where she planted the flowers and, to make it a lovely little place. And she made the curtains for the window because it was their home. Oh, bless their hearts. My parents have come a mighty long way. Bless their hearts.
Yep.
Stand by, everybody.
Seconds.
Oh, thank you, Jewel. Thank you, Eric. And that's Eric is always sharing.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet me on my official Facebook page. Everybody, this is a page where you can reach me, Santita Jackson and Friends. Santita Jackson and Friends. Not Santita Jackson, but Santita Jackson and Friends. So when you want to friend me, please go there. And please like and subscribe at the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please, please, please do that. And thank you for your support. And Jewel and everybody, Dave, follow Eric's lead and share this show. We're so excited to have Ray McGovern with us, former Central Intelligence Agency officer, political activist. Indeed, he's a man of peace, a man of peace, a man of God, CIA analyst, chaired the National Intelligence Estimates. What is that? What is that? Before we get to him, let's of course hear from Chaparral the Pearl. I got to get some more greens from you, Chaparral. Yes, with ham hocks.
Yes, Santita, and we are still taking orders for Easter. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546. And we will definitely make you some green beans, some greens, some mac and cheese, some dressing, whatever it is that you need for your Easter table. Don't hesitate to give us a call. But Celebrations by Us is a one-stop party connection. So we are also doing prom setups for your prom send-off, as well as also graduation parties and weddings. So we are a complete event planner, and we do bloom arches, we do floral arrangement, we do hors d'oeuvres, we do full meals. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546, and we look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Oh, absolutely. Love Chaparral. Well, Ray McGovern. Who is he? Former CIA analyst, Central Intelligence Agency, a man of peace. You've seen him arrested, fighting for peace. You've seen him making the case wherever he can, talking to us about where America is. What is our foreign policy? Where did the CIA come from? How far away is it from its original mission? And that's a whole lot for me to ask Ray McGovern, because I'm from the civil rights movement. Whenever I talk about the alphabets, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. So at least you're the first CIA officer who has declared himself, watch it, who I have talked to. I know I've talked to many of them. I'm just accustomed to infiltration. But you were chair of the National Intelligence Estimates. And you briefed presidents. What is the National Intelligence Estimates? What is it, and what did you do when you were the chair?
Well, Santita, I came down when John Kennedy was president, came down from my native Bronx to West Washington, and I was a Russian expert, having gotten a graduate degree in Russian studies from Fordham University in New York. I became the chief Russian analyst, that is, analyst of Russian, when the Russians and Chinese were at each other's throats. That was really an interesting experience because the situation is 180 degrees different right now. I should to say that when I chaired a couple of national intelligence estimates, well, they're the kind of supreme genre of intelligence analysis. They bring together all agencies as well as all sources, and they try to tell the president what to expect in the near future, for example, on Vietnam and that kind of thing. Now, we were actually pretty prescient in telling President Johnson, look, you're not going to win Vietnam. If you do course A or course B, the results are going to be the same. You're going to have to leave eventually. Those were the estimates. Now, on the president's daily brief, which is the pearl here, that every day that is 6 days a week, every day but Sunday, we would give the president maybe 6 or 7 pages of very brief items on the most current problems in the world. Now, I helped prepare that for President Nixon and President Ford. I ended up personally briefing that one-on-one to President Reagan's top national security advisors. We did that downtown early in the morning. President Reagan, in his wisdom, decided he'd like to sleep in. So I very seldom saw the president himself. I saw his Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Assistant for National Security, and the Vice President and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Every other morning, we worked as a team. That was the best duty available because in those days, and I hasten to emphasize, in those days, we could tell it like it is. We could fulfill the mission that President Truman set us up for, and that is to give the president what Truman called untreated, that it is unbiased, objective, unadorned truth about what was going on in the world. Now things have deteriorated, but I'm proud of my 27 years of being able to do precisely that, as opposed to the other half of the agency, which was involved in operations like overthrowing governments and doing other stuff that I had no knowledge of nor appetite for. So, just to sum up, when we say I worked for the CIA, I sure did. I worked for the unit that Truman wanted to be responsible solely to him, not to the State Department, not to the Pentagon, solely to him. And our charge, our instructions were, look, I want it unadorned. I want it, again, in Truman's word, untreated intelligence. That's what I was able to do on the Soviet Union and Russia. And now I'm back in the saddle again, so to speak, trying to figure out why it is that Russian specialists in this later day don't seem to have a prayer knowing what Russian interests are. That comes into bas relief when we talk about Ukraine.
We're talking with Ray McGovern, veteran intelligence professionals for Santita. Indeed, he was chair of National Intelligence Estimates. He was responsible for briefing the President of the United States, security briefings, everybody. And you focused on Russia and Russia-China. Wow, we are 180 degrees from there to now. I mean, because now Russia and China appear to be joined at the hip. They have no limits, they said, on their partnership. What are we looking at in Ukraine now? I mean, because you have Dr. John Mearsheimer from the University of Chicago here, who it seems that the United States, to a greater extent, and maybe NATO and EU and Russia see this conflict differently. Am I wrong?
No, and that's an enough of the very important problem here. Suffice it to say that back when I started in this business of analysis, Russia and China hated each other. They were shooting across their riverine border. They were claiming huge parcels of land taken under unequal treaties centuries ago. It looked to us back in the 60s and 70s as though they would hate each other forever. Okay? Well, nothing is forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
New people come in, more enlightened leadership comes in, and sure enough, that's what we experience. And gradually, over these decades, in face of what they consider to be, get this now, the common enemy, that's us, okay? In the face of what they consider to be an existential threat, both of them, not only with respect to Europe, but also with respect to East Asia. Well, in the face of that, they have gradually come together, and now we have a situation beginning late last year where they openly advertised that their strategic relationship is, well, it exceeds in warmth, in closeness, and in effectiveness a traditional alliance. You mentioned that they say there's no end, there's no upper end to their relationship, and that happens to be true, and nobody seems to realize that in Washington. You know, this could not be more important, because when you hear the New York Times say, Russia is completely isolated, well, if you don't count 1.4 billion Chinese and 1 billion Indians and South Africa, and if you don't count all those, yeah, sure. Twice, and I emphasize that, twice NATO is confronting the third world, including Russia and China, in a way that, as the old Chinese expression used to put it, in a way that NATO is going to come to a no good end. And I hate to see that happen under unenlightened leadership such as we have had here in Washington for the last several decades. It's really sad for someone like me to watch.
So is there a way out? Is there a way through? I mean, what are we looking at right now? Because when I listen to the corporate media, no one is talking about peace. I mean, nobody. There seems to be no pathway to it. I just hear the generals and the admirals on TV talking about all that they're going to do. I even understood, as I listened to MSNBC this morning, that Ukraine has some of their troops training in Mississippi here in the United States. Can we not be involved with this when we're training and arming their troops?
Well, Santita, we've been up to our neck training, arming. Not only that, somehow the mainstream media never recounts this major factoid, so to speak, and that is that in 2014, February 22nd to be precise, we, that is the United States and our Western intelligence services, orchestrated a coup d'etat, a putsch, in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. There had been a duly elected president of Ukraine who was sympathetic, at least took Russia's interests into account. He was removed in a bloody coup. And when people call that the most blatant coup in history, they are referring to the fact that 18 days before the coup, get this now, 2.5 weeks before the coup, it was advertised on YouTube. In short, an intercepted telephone conversation was replayed on YouTube showing Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland and our ambassador, that is the U.S. ambassador in Kiev, plotting the coup to the point of mentioning who would be coming in as prime minister, and then saying, and this I regret to tell everyone, then saying that Joe Biden vice president at the time, he'd come in and stitch this thing together and give an internationally well-known and respected voice to glue this thing and to say, well, this is it. This is the new Ukraine, which, by the way, said that they would join NATO as soon as the coup was over. So that's the danger. If Ukraine would join NATO, then hard up against Russia, right in the area where Napoleon and Hitler and others came through, you would have a hostile alliance, a military alliance. There's no disguising that. And that was a bridge too far. Finally, just about this time last year, Putin asked the president of China, look, they hate you guys as much as they hate us. Let's see if we could deter them from going any farther. And if we can't, I just may have to invade Ukraine. Now, please be aware, I don't condone. I think it's awful what happened beginning in the late February. But it happened not because it was, quote, unprovoked, end quote, but it happened because it was provoked. And that is the story that American consumers of our mainstream do not get because it's not told. And of course, people have to remember who controls the mainstream media. And the answer is exactly the same corporations that profiteer on war by arms making, by arms selling, by funding candidates for Congress. And that's the way it works. So I don't usually quote Pope Francis. On this one I will. When he came to Congress, 2015, I think, 2015, he said in a speech, very pointedly, he said, quote, the main problem today is the blood-drenched arms traders, end quote. Wow. All those Congress people got up and clapped, and senators and representatives are like, oh, yeah. And then they looked into their best pockets to see if the latest check from Lockheed was there. Another one, whether when they were clapping, maybe the one from Raytheon slipped out. I mean, it was giving hypocrisy a bad name. So that's the name of the game. The media is controlled by those same corporations, so we cannot expect the truth from what we call corporate establishment, mainstream media.
How do we get at the truth here? I mean, how do we?
Well, it's going to take. I'm sorry.
No, how do we find it?
Well, it's going to take more than we've been able to sacrifice so far. It's going to take putting our bodies into it. Now, when I go on a Zoom or an interview with so prominent a person as John Mearsheimer, who you mentioned before from the University of Chicago, who says, look, this whole thing is NATO's fault. It all goes back to 2008, at least, where we said we're going to make Ukraine part of NATO, a defensive alliance. Well, one could compare that kind of situation. But let's say Mexico joined an alliance with Russia or with China, a military alliance, right on our border. What will we do? I know what we do. It happened before. 1962, when the Russians started to put offensive missiles in Cuba, what did we do? We faced them down, make them turn around. Now, that was John Kennedy. He had good advisors. They did this without any bloodletting. I hesitate to even think of what the advisors now in Washington were all wet behind the ears and don't realize that Russia has national interests too, what they would advise Biden to do. So, in answer to your question, Santita, I think we have to put our bodies into it. I've been beaten up by police, not as much as many other people, but I've been put in prison and so forth. And you know what? The reaction has been amazing. And I think partly because I'm an old guy now, right? That was even an old guy 10 years ago, right? Now, Americans don't like to see old guys beat up by the police. Young people, unless it's students, I got to come and set up that fresh kids. Old guys not. So here's an appeal. All the old guys, all women listening to me right here. You have an advantage. Take advantage of it. You won't get killed. At least not yet. You might get beat up, roughed up, as I have been. But people take note. They say, even the young people say, well, I wonder why these old guys think it's so important to make a statement and let themselves be harassed by police. I wonder why that is. And this, of course, all happened before, back in the civil rights movement, of which I'm a complete admirer. So that's what we've got to do, it seems to me, because the mainstream media is not going to allow information that is accurate to go to our brothers and sisters. And that's really, really a problem. We have to find some other way to do that.
We're talking with Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst, former chair of the National Intelligence Estimates. He briefed 3 presidents. Chaparral wants to know, have you briefed or advised President Biden?
Well, we've done our best.
We have to ask.
In a word, we have a group. It's composed of alumni and alumnae from virtually every U.S. intelligence institution, CIA, FBI, State Department, NSA, you name it. We have a representative, or at least one, from each of those agencies. We formed ourselves 2 months before the war on Iraq, so that's 19 years ago. We formed ourselves for the express purpose of exposing what our former colleagues were doing, and that was, sad to say, lying through their teeth, giving Cheney and Bush, quote, ammunition, end quote, to, quote, justify, end quote, an unjustifiable attack on Iraq, which posed no threat to the United States, and which they knew posed no threat to the United States. So, 2 months before the war, we formed ourselves, and we've been advising presidents to the degree their situation room will let our memos through. Ever since then, which was February 2003, when our first memo, which was based on Colin Powell's speech at the UN, we told the president this was no reason to go to war. You ought to widen your circle of advisors so you speak more common sense. So ever since then, we have about 60 of those memos out now. We've written a couple to Biden, but there's no, unless Fox News, God help us, or CBS or NBC, BSNBC, unless they put it out on the book tube or in the air somewhere, we cannot be assured that President Biden is being advised that those advisors he has don't know, how do I say this, don't know much about the situation between Russia and China. Last thing I'll say on this one is that exactly a year ago, when they were preparing for the in-person summit in Geneva, that is Biden and Putin, on the 16th of June, these advisors told Biden, Russia has a big, big problem that we don't have. China is squeezing them. That's the word that Biden himself used, squeezing them. And they have a big problem on that border. They're very, very, very worried about this. Well, Biden, in his innocence, says that to Putin. And we know that because Biden told us that before he got on the plane to come back to the U.S. Now here's Putin. He looks at his advisors. He says, my God, I mean, what Biden just said was true 5 decades ago. China's our ally now. And that began the rest of the story, which really amounted to Putin and President Xi of China giving a little tutorial to Biden and others to say, look, we're closer than ever before. You attack one of us, you can expect a two-front war.
Wow.
Nothing could be more dangerous than that, Santita.
I mean, we are essentially, would you say, I've got about a minute and a half left here. Is the United States specifically in a conflict, in a war with Russia?
Well, it's a proxy war so far.
Mm-hmm.
We're allowing the Ukrainians to do the fighting. We are giving them arms up to their necks, okay? My concern, and the concern of others like John Mearsheimer, is that this is a very volatile situation. It could lead to an unintended incident, which would get the U.S. and NATO explicitly involved, directly involved.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about here is a nuclear-armed nation named Russia, which is already threatened that in the final analysis, with their back against the wall, they would consider using nuclear weapons. That could not be more dangerous. That is more dangerous, according to John Mearsheimer, than the Cuban Missile Crisis itself in 1962. And I know about that personally since I was at Fort Benning, Georgia at the time.
Everybody go to raymcgovern.com, raymcgovern.com, or antiwar.com. If you want to read his writings, and you should, go to raymcgovern.com so that you can hear him for yourself. I wish he were more present on corporate media, but you know what? He's right where he needs to be, here on WCPT, on AM 950 radio, on the Santita Jackson Show. He's here because this is where you want him to be. And I cannot wait to have you back on the show, because we're trying to understand what we are looking at. Chaparral says, I wonder who's advising the president. He's definitely not listening to what is important to the American people. I mean, I understand Ukraine's importance, but that's not what most Americans are concerned about. You're right. Most Americans are bread and butter issues. That's what's driving Americans right now. Stay with me. I got about 5 more minutes with Ray McGovern, so he can kind of wrap this up, because I want to hear from him. I always do. I love you, everybody. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And let's begin to wrap this up. And I want to hear from you, Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst. God bless you. Thank you, Devin, for a great show. God bless everybody. Brother Ray, with what do you say in this article? Houston, we have a problem. And you can see the way Russia is positioned in our studies academically. We have a problem because I think we're not being objective. And, and anyone who's gone through school knows that, objectivity is really key. But we've lost all of that. So I want to know from you, what's the path forward? Because it seems that whenever Turkey and Israel and other countries have been trying to negotiate a peace settlement, it seems that there's pushback from the United States about what Ukraine should and should not accept. And we do appear to be getting perilously close to some kind of nuclear conflict. And some people are saying that it could be a contained nuclear conflict. Can it really be? We saw what happened to these troops who went to Chernobyl. That was almost 40 years ago. They got sick. What's the path forward?
Well, Santita, the first thing is to make sure that enough people know the truth to make a difference. Next thing is that among those people have to be courageous people willing to put their bodies into it. Now, that happened 60 years ago with the Civil Rights Movement. This is, from an international perspective, this is equally important. People don't know even where Ukraine is. All they know is what they've been brainwashed to know, and that is Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, is a demon. He's a devil incarnate. He's responsible
for us having Donald Trump for 4 years. Now, I'm no fan of Donald Trump, but can you think of anything worse to accuse someone? And it was all made up. It was all made up, this Russia game. The problem is, Santita, that people have been exposed to this Russia, Putin, bad, for 6 years now, for God's sake, 6 years. And when you're brainwashed like that, you tend to believe the worst. Now, again, I didn't think that Putin would go so far as to invade Ukraine. The way I put it together is that even I underestimated the closeness of the alliance between China and Russia. I think that when President Putin was in Beijing, China, on February 4th to open the Olympics, he got together with President Xi and said, look, we may have to, the U.S. is not taking us seriously. We may have to invade Ukraine. And could you hold on for a second?
Of course, yes. Everybody, what do you think about this? I like getting more information because I want to know what is going on. And the CIA, the former CIA analyst who briefed the president, it's a rare privilege to be able to speak to someone who has functioned in our national security structure at such a high level, who is essentially a man of peace. And I'm so glad that he shares with us and that he puts his body on the line. He's put his reputation on the line. He could be living a life of tremendous comfort, but every time I turn around, Ray McGovern's getting arrested and they're scandalizing his name, all because he wants peace, everybody. So listen up. Brother Ray?
Thanks, Santita.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm back here. My first duty is to take care of my wife, so
Of
I'm
course.
done right now.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
all I'm saying here is that it really comes to the point where we need to get out there and do what we did during the civil rights movement. And I'm proud to have been a classmate of some of the people who did those voyages or those trips down to the South to support the civil rights movement in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So it's really pretty critical now. And the little group we have, we've got hundreds of years of experience at senior levels in analysis of Russia, we need to be able to get before people and talk to them. That's why I always say yes indeed when you ask me to come on, Santita, because we chip away at this. Whoever will be able to listen needs to listen, and then you need to spread the word.
Yes.
I forget what we were talking about before, but maybe you could bring me back on track.
Well, I'm just trying, I'm really, ultimately, I'm looking for a path forward. Because I don't, the demonization of President Putin and with his soaring popularity in Russia, which has got Americans bewildered. There is, I'm trying to figure out what is the path forward, because it seems that, I'll hear Turkey, I'll hear Israel say we're making progress with the peace talks. Then you hear someone from the American side who'll say, no, they're not. I'm like, what are we doing here? Because you don't want any more death. You don't want any more pain. More than 4 million people have been displaced.
Santita, I think what people need to know right now is that it's bound to be much worse for a while before there's any chance of it getting better. Now, what you hear from the mainstream media, namely that Ukraine is winning, that's not right. They're not winning. The Russians are going to clean out that pocket in the southeast part of Ukraine before anything else happens. Those are the people that have been shelling Russian citizens and Russian-speaking people in those eastern provinces of Donetsk and Lugansk, okay? 14,000 people killed by shelling and so forth since 2014, the coup that I mentioned earlier. So what we need to do is realize that unless the U.S. and NATO come to their senses, Putin is going to finish the job. And so these next few weeks are going to be worse than before. The more so since he enjoys 83% level popularity in Russia. We've seen gruesome photos of what we claim have been Russian atrocities in Ukraine. What the Russian people have seen are gruesome photos of what Ukrainian forces, particularly the Nazi influenced Azov battalion, have done to Russian soldiers, shooting them in the kneecap, killing them. That's what they've been exposed to. So unless people realize that, Russia has its own strategic interests, unless they realize that what John Mearsheimer says is right, and that is that this is an existential threat to Russia, having NATO right up on its border, putting missile sites in and so forth. When you have an existential threat, as Mearsheimer says, you have to win, right? You have to win. And Joe Biden, for his part, can't suffer a defeat or even something that looks like a defeat at the hands of Russia, because the midterms are coming up. People are already calling him a coward, so he can't lose either. That's why I say, hey, we have a problem here, Houston. If you have two nuclear-armed people who have to win, well, you've got trouble.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is realize it's going to get worse before it gets better. Don't be taken in by the atrocity photos, many of which are of dubious provenance, and just kind of ride through this thing and try to get the real story. But tune into programs like yours, Santita, and there's hope. There's always hope. And when people say, well, there aren't enough of us, well, I feel honored, because that's exactly what people said to Cesar Chavez, right?
That's right.
Hey, let's what happened to this. And you say, let's do the great boycott. And they say, oh, say, well, that's a great idea. But there aren't enough of us. And what he said famously was, there are enough of us, but without action, nothing's going to happen. We got to do some action here. I use a little proverb that I heard one time years ago, and that is that we have to invoke the Noah of the Bible, the Noah principle, and that is no more awards for predicting rain, awards only for building arks.
Wow.
We've got to build some arks, and there are enough of us.
Amen. 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 Ray McGovern, I thank you for your powerful witness. Thank you for co-founding Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Thank you for your service, briefing our president. Thank you for stepping away and saying, hey, we don't have this right, and we need to get this right. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for being a leading light for me, someone for whom I have tremendous admiration, and my love to your wife and to your family. And may God continue to keep you safe. We do need you.
You're most welcome, Santita. Thank you for having me on your program.
Always. God bless you, everybody. Please like and share this program. Like and share, like and share. Well, wait a minute. Sylvia says Putin will finish the genocide. Do you have a comment for that?
Yeah, well, there have been charges back and forth about genocide. This is a legal term. It has been true, and this is the fact that most Americans don't know, that after the coup in Kiev, when prominent neo-Nazis took power in Ukraine, 14,000 people in those Russian-speaking provinces next to Russia, Donetsk and Lugansk, 14,000 people have been killed by shelling. Now, I don't know if you can call that that's not quite fits the definition, but that's a lot of people. So whatever you call it legally, Putin finally decided, look, this is probably the time to move. I've got the president of China at my back. He hasn't said, no, please don't do this. He sort of said, well, you're going to do this after the Olympics, right? Oh my God, it's great. So, one day after the
Mm.
She declares that yes, it will Gunks independent.
Mm.
2 days later, invades Ukraine. I shouldn't laugh. This is so terrible and so vicious. But that's the way it came down. American people don't know the first thing about that there is an alliance now. Russia is not isolated. And even these sanctions have come back to bite us. And I dare say that probably bite the Democratic Party.
Mm.
The alternative is even worse. It's a terrible situation to be in. As American citizens, we have to get out there and make our views known.
Well, everybody, pay attention, and go to as many different news outlets as you can. There's more than one point of view. Please, please go to raymcgovern.com. 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 raymcgovern.com, or go to antiwar.com. Please, please, everybody, we can make a difference. We can have peace. All we're saying is give peace a chance. Let's do it. Much love to you, Brother Ray. Amen. 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 God bless you, and thank you so much. Love you much, and have a wonderful day. My love to your beautiful wife.
Thank you very much, Santita.
Thank you. Love you all. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show.